Sika and Taylor will be chatting, and then we'll open up the floor to questions in the second half. So as questions come up in the second half, there's two ways to ask questions. You can use the chat box on the right-hand side to type in a question, or you can use the raised hand functions, which if you have the participants tab open on the side, you should see a little raise hand button. That way we can see a little blue hand comes up and we can see if you have questions. And other announcements, our Facebook group, the Feisty Happy Hour, is still going strong. So we're trying to put up some content just to get you guys prepped for the happy hours and continue the conversation afterwards. So have a look for that on Facebook. I can post a link to the group in the chat box. And Live Feisty has their Patreon campaign ongoing. So if you want to become a patron of Live Feisty, you can do that at patreon.com/Live Feisty. So I will let Taylor take it away.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. I'm super excited to get to chat with Sika today. She's someone I've wanted to meet for a long time, so I'm super excited. But first, I'll just tell you a little bit about Sika, and then we'll jump into some of the questions and discussion. So Sika is a competitive triathlete. She's a two-time marathon winner and a former collegiate high jumper. She specializes in the 70.3 distance and has podiumed at every 70.3 race she competed in 2018 and 2019. Her ultimate goal is to turn pro in triathlon and to be the first African-American woman to do so. She's really passionate about increasing diversity within the sport, and she writes a lot on her blog, Why I Run. Yeah, so welcome, Sika. I'm super happy to meet you.
Thank you.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about was last year you had this really horrific crash at 70.3 Texas, and you had kind of a long road back to racing. I don't think you raced again until probably like Kona or maybe right before then.
No, actually I raced 2 months after the crash, like still taped up and everything.
Oh, wow. That's insane.
And then I did IRONMAN 70.3 Augusta 2 weeks before Kona. So no, there was something.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking you did a 70.3 right before Kona, but I couldn't remember which one. But yeah, so I'm interested in hearing more about the crash and kind of your journey back. I think a lot of people are obviously not facing a situation like that right now, but a lot of people are kind of dealing with derailed seasons and kind of not being able to swim. So I think there's kind of some parallels between your recovery and what you went through and what people are going through right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my situation was traumatic, I guess, but in some ways I do think people can relate to what I went through, because I feel like I'm going through this situation again in some ways. So after my crash, I wasn't able to swim at all because number one, I had developed infections from all the road rash, and I did a lot of damage to the tendons in my neck and my back, so I couldn't turn my head right or left. So it's not like I could swim or breathe or anything. So it was a couple months before I actually got back in the pool. And then when I finally did, I was swimming with a snorkel. So yeah, I was out of the pool for a while, kind of like what everybody's going through right now with not being able to swim and just using cords or whatever they can find. And for me, it was harder. This is almost an easier situation because last year, and I hate to say this out loud, but I wasn't jealous of people, but I was watching everybody race because my crash happened right at the start of the season, right? So like I'm watching everybody go to all these races. Like I was supposed to do Eagleman in June and everybody's racing and I'm just kind of sitting home like waiting for myself to heal. So now with COVID, it's kind of like we're all just stuck home together. So in that way, it's a little easier, but yeah, for me, I felt like I was just kind of laying around lazy. I was working from home and I'm lucky that my job let me work from home, but I was working from home full time. And I was mostly on my indoor trainer. I wasn't going outside for rides because I was still trying to heal and I was waiting to get a new bike. So again, like what people are doing right now, riding hours on their trainer, even running outside. I was only doing limited mileage because again, I was healing. So yeah, so in some ways I feel sort of like I'm going through that again, but it was a slow, gradual build back. And I wondered every time I worked out, like how long it was going to take me to get back to normal. You know, that feeling where you are just sitting around and you're getting lazy or gaining weight or whatever else. And you're like, great, I'm never going to be a great athlete again. And you're looking at what everybody else is doing and they seem like they're training hardcore and they're getting faster and all that stuff. So, I mean, you shouldn't compare yourself to other people, but it's hard not to in a social media age. So what I would say though is once I was cleared to start training properly again, I think because I've been an athlete most of my life, my body just really, it was almost like it remembered what to do and the times just started gradually going down. So I would think from what I experienced last year, I would say just like be patient and be okay with taking the downtime. I think as athletes, we're used to just going, and wearing ourselves thin and, you know, going to work, training a gazillion hours. So I don't know, it's like take advantage of the downtime. In some ways, I kind of wish I took advantage of the downtime last year too. I was so eager to get back that I hopped in everything really fast.
And then can you talk a little bit about what happened with the actual crash? Like I saw some like horrific pictures and it looks like you like had a bunch of stitches in your face and like what happened at 70.3?
Oh gosh, yeah, it was really bad. So 70.3 Texas was not a rolling start. It was an age group wave start. And I was one of the last waves, And usually this would be okay with me, but you know how it is when you get faster, more competitive, you're kind of closer to the field, and usually more the beginners and the stuff, they're kind of, you know, on, you know, simple road bikes, stuff like that. They're still learning how to, you know, ride on the right, pass on the left, stuff like that, kind of like how I was when I first got started. So I was already really nervous, and 70.3 Texas is a big race. So I was kind of thinking this in the back of my head that I wish I hadn't signed up for it. I wish I had known ahead of time that it was going to be age group rolling. But anyway, age group wave start. So I swam, I got out on the bike course and it was really crowded. I remember I had a hard time even just mounting properly because people were in the middle of the road standing there trying to get clipped in. It was kind of a mess. So once I got going, I just like went flat out and I wanted to go after my pro card. So I needed top 3 amateur overall. And I trained all winter. I was really fit. So I went after it. And, you know, I will take a little bit of blame for it. The fact that it wasn't the safest conditions and I was still flying in aero and not like, you know, gently pedaling on my hoods, I guess. But anyway, so I was in aero and the street was pretty narrow. We were sectioned off on the right side of the road so that the cars were on the left and there were really large high cones. So I'm passing people, and after this, I don't really remember much, but luckily a few people reached out to me through social media and they saw my accident. So they kind of pieced everything back together for me. But apparently another competitor was moving to the left to pass somebody else, and they didn't look to see that I was coming, and they went right in my straightaway. And I swerved to not hit them, which I didn't hit them, but I was going, I don't know, according to my Garmin, I was going like 26, 27 miles an hour. I had a disc wheel. We had a tailwind, and I just flew straight into the cone, and I crashed my, I was wearing a helmet with the visor that completely shattered in my face. I was knocked unconscious. I broke my nose. I had lacerations to 6 sections of my face. I had about 40 stitches in my face. My teeth were knocked loose. Luckily, I have my own teeth. They had to put a slit in my mouth so I could keep my teeth, but I couldn't eat solid food or anything because they were too loose. And, you know, I had road rash all over the place. I mean, I was just a mess. I was knocked out for hours. I don't really remember anything until they were almost done stitching me. And then I woke up. And when I first woke up, I couldn't really move my head. It was too painful. So my first thought was, oh my God, I'm paralyzed, you know? And then once I could like move my arms and stuff, I'm like, okay, I'm okay. I'm not paralyzed. And then I thought that I had been in a car crash because I remembered racing, but the pain and how I looked, it was so severe that I thought like maybe I crashed and went through the windshield. I didn't really understand. And they had cut the kid off me. So I was like in a robe naked pretty much. So it was just like, maybe I was in a car accident. So anyway, the doctors tried to, you know, explain the whole situation to me, and I was trying to piece everything back together. And yeah, but it was scary as hell when they wouldn't show me a pic, like they wouldn't give me a mirror. So I asked for my cell phone, and because they have to give you your cell phone. So I did the, you know, photo face thing, switched over. And when I saw what I looked like, I was like, holy hell, wow, this is really, really bad. I'm going to be single for the rest of my life. That was my first one.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, you healed beautifully. You can't even tell.
Thank you. Actually, you can in person. You definitely can. I'm still healing, yeah, but yeah, so they were really good. They were like, I would give myself credit for being strong because there were certain things that were like, well, we can either do surgery later and fix your nose and all that stuff, or we can do it manually right now, holding you down. And I'm like, okay, just do everything right now. Like, I don't want to go through this. So yeah, right there in the emergency room. Yep.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, so you mentioned that you were going after your pro card in this race, and I know that's something you've been kind of very adamant and very vocal about. So I'm kind of interested in hearing more about your journey to becoming a pro, and kind of how that started.
Sure. Yeah, that story isn't even, whenever people ask, it's not even that interesting. I wish I had something that, you know, some people tell stories of like, oh, this happened to me. And at that point I knew. And for me, it wasn't really that. Like, I didn't even like, so I did high jump in college. Like, I didn't even like running a mile to warm up. Like, my coach, my long day would be like 2 miles. And I'm like, why do I have to run that long? I'm just doing high jump. So it's ironic that I'm doing long stuff now, but I do have a love of running. After college and everything, just to stay in shape, I would go out for long runs, and then I started hopping in 5Ks, and I had a marathon on my bucket list, and that went horrible. I ended up walking half the course and puking and everything. I hadn't really prepared for it, but when I moved out to Virginia, actually, it's like the work out here, like New York City versus here is so different. You can actually have a life. So, and there are races every weekend, and people aren't working crazy hours. So I started just like hopping in on group runs and everything. And I just found this love of running. And after my first marathon, I did my second marathon out here, and I shocked myself and dropped like an hour off my time, and I won the marathon. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm a pretty good I'm a decent endurance athlete. And then I swam all 4 years of high school. Not that you would ever know because I'm a terrible swimmer, but I swam and then I ran, and I was like, well, I'll add a triathlon to my bucket list. And at the time I was going through a terrible breakup, and I didn't really, wasn't really going out. I was kind of depressed, and I wanted something to take my mind off of it. And it happened to be, there happened to be a sprint triathlon locally right out here at Hampton, at Buckrow Beach in Hampton. And I signed up for that, and I did it on a mountain bike, and I finished like last place, but I thought it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. So that's how I got into the triathlon. into triathlon. And then in regards to turning pro, I just wanted to see how much faster I could get if I got coached properly and moved up in distance. And yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I think with most people, when you do something like, you know, marathon or whatever, you get hooked and then you're like, how much time can I drop? For me, it was, well, how much faster can I get? How high in this sport can I get? And that would be earning a pro card. So yeah, not that interesting, but that's how the whole like goal of chasing my pro card came about.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's similar to a lot of people's journeys too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious, you've been kind of vocal about increasing the diversity of triathlon and getting more African Americans involved in the sport. So I'm curious what you think about kind of what barriers exist and how can we, basically like how can we improve the numbers?
Right. Well, I mean, for anybody who shows up, and I don't know if it's only runners or triathletes on here, but when you show up to a triathlon and you actually do pay attention and you look around, you won't see very many people that look like me, a person of color. Obviously, it's male dominated, but on top of that, there just aren't very minorities in the sport of triathlon. And, you know, from everything that I've read and the people that I've talked to and being part of different groups like Black Triathletes Association and now Fast Chicks and a few others, you know, and you ask them, number one, which is the hardest discipline for you? What kept you from being in the sport? Why aren't your family members in it? Why do they choose other sports? It's mostly because of swimming. And a statistic that I've recited countless times is that about 70% of African Americans can't swim. So with the swim being the first discipline or leg of the triathlon, I mean, it makes sense that somebody that looks like me isn't in the sport. And I know you put it in my bio, I think before this, so there's never been an African American woman professional triathlete. So if I was to earn my pro card, that would make me the first, which is crazy in 2020, that is the case. And so I wouldn't say that, like, I guess I've professed this so many times that I want to be the first African American woman to earn my pro card, but I would just love to see an African American woman be on the pro start list. That would be great. If it happens to be me, that's awesome. You know, with my luck between the crash and now COVID, who knows if I'm like, sometimes I'm like, maybe it's not even meant to happen, but yeah, no, I think it would be great. I think it would be good to see a face in the crowd that looks like mine. Like, I don't want to stand out. Like, I would love to see I mean, you know how it is with us women when just like even being in Kona, I didn't realize that it was, I think 70%, maybe Sarah knows this, 70% men, 30% women. And, you know, I didn't realize that. I actually thought it was 50-50 or like 60-40 or something until I got to Kona and I was like, oh, wow, this really is male dominated.
Yeah, so it like 100% should be 50-50 because that's how most world championships are run, right? But in our sport, because we do that proportionality thing where they give out slots according to how many people are in your age group, it ends up being 27 or 28%. Usually it goes year to year.
Crazy. Okay, I didn't even realize that it was because of the slot allocation. I just thought it was because we aren't in the sport as much, but that makes sense.
I always think it's like, well, it is, yeah, it is like, it's like this great, I don't know what you call it, like, it's kind of an irony, like when you're at the pro meeting or the press conference ahead of the race, and Andrew Messick always gets up and does his big announcement about how, like, we have so many women here, and then he announces like 27 or 28%, which is exactly the same as the other years. So like, they're not actually increasing the number of women in the sport, because it would go up. Like, so if we had more women in the sport, it would go up in that proportional, the way they've set up the system, but it's not working. And then you have the other thing of, like, at a world championship, who deserves to be there? Probably the best in the world, not the best proportional to how many women are actually in the sport. That just actually Makes sense. Anyway, rant over. Sorry, Taylor, carry on.
No, that makes sense. The thing I was going to add is that, yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously a shortage of women in triathlon, and there's obviously a shortage of women of color in triathlon. Like, usually when I race, I see, like, it's me. And I'm sure you probably feel the same, Sika. It's like, it's very few and far between.
Okay, I'm just gonna put this out here. I don't know if my parents are on here, but my dad came to Kona with me, and he got there, I don't know, 3 days after me, and we're walking around. He's like, why is everybody staring at you? And I'm like, right? I'm like, I noticed that too, you know? And I'm like, maybe they think I live here, but it was obvious, like I'm wearing triathlon gear, but literally everybody would. I've never said that publicly, but I got stared at for sure. Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We had one question about what it takes to get your pro card. So I don't know if you could like briefly talk about the American system. I know it varies like by country, but just so that people have like an understanding.
Right, yeah, so it does vary by country. So with us, we're governed by USA Triathlon, and so if you go to USA Triathlon, their website, there's a list of criteria, and there's about, I think, 8 different ways that you can get it. So if you're, let's say you're top 10 amateur female at Kona, that would earn you a slot, or male, goes both ways, male or female, it's the same. So there's that way. There's also at USA Triathlon Nationals, I think if you come in top 6 and within 8% of the winning time, that would get your pro card. The way that I was going after it was top 3 amateur overall at a qualifying race. So before Kona, I did Ironman 70.3 Augusta. It was 2 weeks before Kona, so it was like 5 months after my crash, but I still wanted to give it a go, so I would have had to get top 3 there, top 3 female amateur overall, and I got 6. So if I came in 3rd, then I would have gotten it. So hopefully that answers your question, whoever asked that. But people do ask that often, and I think that they should publicize that more of how to get your pro card, because most people don't realize it. But yeah, I would say the one that people are most familiar with is top 3 amateur overall at a qualifying race. And usually the qualifying races are the largest, most competitive triathlons. So it has to have, I think, $20,000 or more in pro prize purse, and there has to be like 300 or more competitors. So there's like a long criteria. So Augusta was the one that I was going after.
Yeah. And then what are your future plans for trying to qualify? Obviously we can't race right now, but what were your plans?
Yeah. So my goal was I was supposed to do Challenge Cancun, a half Ironman in April. That was a qualifier. So it had pro field, 20,000 or more pro prize purse. So if I came in top 3 there, so I trained for that to do it in April. In fact, I'd actually gone to Cancun, where the race site was, in December for Christmas break with my family, and trained on the course and everything. So it just sucks. But and then if I didn't get it there, my next goal was Eagleman next month, and it looks like that's either going to get rescheduled till later in the year. So I think, like everybody, my plans are just totally up in the air. I'm just taking it a day at a time to see, what's going to happen when the economy opens up, and I feel like that's all just out of my control right now. But yeah, I mean, if I can get in a race in the fall, that would be great. But we'll see. I mean, I haven't swam, so I still, even if they said tomorrow that they're opening, I would not go out there and race. I'd embarrass myself. Like, how do I swim again? But yeah, I guess I just have to wait on to see what's happening with the economy and what's safe before I can make, those athletic plans in terms of racing for my pro card.
Good. We have some more questions pouring in, so I'm gonna switch over to those. The first one is from Jim. He said, how do you think COVID-19 will impact qualifying for Kona this year? I don't know if you know that, but I'm curious what you think.
I have been following that. I've heard talks that it might get we scheduled for February next year. I heard that rumor about Kona. I think I don't think anybody really knows, because it's not like Andrew Messick has any say on when races can open up again. Yeah, I mean, I've been reading a little bit about it, but for me, my mindset is nothing will happen until the fall if we're lucky, but I would most likely just plan for next year, and maybe if you qualified, the slots will roll to next year and they'll try to bridge the gap between the race qualifiers. I don't know. I really don't know. I wish I could answer that for you. Yeah. Hopefully they'll talk more about it in like Triathlete magazine. I know people on the forums of Slow Twitch, they talk a little bit about Kona, stuff like that.
Yeah, I heard a rumor that Worlds, both the 70.3 Worlds and Kona, were going to be decided on this month, but
okay.
That's all I know. So,
I mean, if international traveling is banned, then for this year, at least from the US, then,
okay.
I would think that they would just push everything to next year.
And then we have another question. What changes when you go pro?
Say it again.
We have another question that's, what changes when you go pro?
I can retire from this sport.
Never race again.
Yes, I can have a life. Get a dog. Go out on dates and have a life. No, I'm just kidding. What changes? Well, I don't have to worry about crashing in an age group wave start. I can start in front of everybody. That's one thing. Gosh, what changes? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I would have more credibility. I've had a lot of fun talking at schools and everything recently before the whole COVID thing. I was going to a lot of the inner city schools, and I was a guest speaker at one, and they had never even heard of triathlon. So when I told them what Kona and Ironman was, they were like, I mean, these kids are like 7 years old, but they're like, whoa. But, they're asking me like, so you're a professional or are you on TV? I'm like, no, not yet. So, they're kind of looking at me like, well, what are you doing up here? But, I would hope that it would give me some credibility. But for me, what would change is I would just have finally accomplished something that I've been chasing for a really long time and have gone a lot through to get to that point. So it's all very personal for me. It's not, oh, I'll get sponsors and, money and contracts. Like, my life won't really change that much. I have a really great job. I work in corporate America, and, so that part of my life won't change at all, but it'll just be, finally, I've achieved something that I've been chasing.
And then we have a question from Anne. She's asking, are you doing any of the Ironman VR races?
No, not yet. So I was supposed to race in April, a half Ironman, and when the whole COVID thing happened, I was kind of, I don't know how other people are, if they're like this, but when you're right about to race, you're just wanting to taper so bad, and you're kind of like beat up and you're like on the verge of injury. So when the race got canceled, and then the pools closed down and everything else, my coach and I talked about it. We're like, just give your body a break. Like, I never really took a true break after my crash. After my crash, I think within 2 weeks I was out going for walk jogs, and within 2 months I was racing and then training all summer and all that. So I never really gave my body time to fully recuperate. So yeah, I'm just I haven't done any of the virtual races yet. I do plan on it. And I'd like my coach and I have talked about me running a, like timed half marathon on my own, maybe a full marathon. So yeah, no, I've really just started getting back into training again. In fact, this weekend was the first time that I went out and rode over 2 hours.
Cool. And then we have Carl is asking, do you have a mentor or are you mentoring other female triathletes? Good question.
Mentor. Oh, Sarah's going to kill me for saying this. I have a lot of male mentors. Yeah, there's a lot of guys that I reach out to that I'm really close to that have been in the sport for a long time. And me mentoring other people, that's probably not a good idea. I do the volunteer stuff. I don't know if you call it mentoring, but I do speak at the schools to the students about the sport and, what it takes. And, but yeah, no, there's no individuals. And then of course, I'm an open book. People reach out to me on social media, which is great. Whenever I receive emails, you can reach me through my website. You can message me that way, or, through Facebook or something like that. So I always get asked random questions like, what trainer are you using to, how did you get started in the sport? And I've had people ask about like coaching advice, and I've recommended different coaches. I recommended the first coach that I had, which was through the 50 Women to Kona. Yeah, when you guys did that program of free coaching to women, if you applied and got selected. So Coach Sue's actually a woman reached out to me. She was still kind of new in the sport, and I was like, it should be really perfect for you. So yeah, but yeah, no, I wish I could say that I had a female mentor, but I don't. Yeah. But that just goes to show how male-dominated this sport is. Because I think if there were more women at the top, so for instance, somebody like Eric Gilsonen, if you're familiar with him, he does a lot of the commentating at the races, and he's a Hoka rep, and he's the one that introduced me to Hoka. And then, who else? Dan Enfield with Slow Twitch. So it's, men at the top of the sport that I've been lucky to come into contact with. So they've gone on to mentor me. I will say that Julie Moss, I met her, what was it, 2 years ago now at the first Outspoken Summit. She's awesome. Like if I ever email her with questions or anything like that, she's been really great. She helped me a lot at Kona. We emailed back and forth. We had lunch together. So, somebody as big in the sport as Julie Moss, if you send her questions or whatever else, she's awesome. So maybe I consider her a mentor.
Do you have any other pros that you kind of look to for advice or guidance or anything?
No, I mean, I'm a big blog reader. I follow on social media and stuff like that. And actually after my crash, I've heard from a few pro women, which was awesome. Rennie emailed me. So, I mean, if I ran into her now, I don't know if she remember me, but, people that I admire had actually heard about the crash and reached out. So I heard from Rennie, I heard from Heather Jackson. I was like, maybe I should crash again. This is amazing. And oh my gosh, who else? I've heard from Sarah True. So there are a lot of the top female triathletes in the sport that I look up to and admire and follow and stuff like that. Subscribe to their channel, things like that. Yeah.
Cool. We have a question from Vanessa. Have you replaced swimming with anything in particular, for instance, yoga or weight training more?
Yeah, weight training. I don't like weight training. But yeah, weight training. I weight trained in college when I jumped, and then I didn't weight train at all until after my crash last year. I had so many imbalances, so I started working with a strength conditioning coach through the summer, and I stuck with that. So my coach and I decided, I don't meet up with anybody because obviously the whole distancing, but I have things that I follow that I do. So yeah, a lot of upper body strength work right now. I do have a swim bench and I use cords, and my coach has me do about 30 minutes every other day. So I don't know how much you can compare that to swimming. Yeah, I am pretty worried because it's the worst. I'm the worst out of all those three things. I'm really not a good swimmer, so I can only imagine how much feel of the water I've lost. But I've just been doing the cords. Yeah, hopefully I'm doing it properly. I don't know, but I do push-ups. I have a pull-up bar. I do that. So yeah, I stick to a strength training schedule right now.
Gotcha. And we have a question from Zoe about how you'll balance working with being a professional athlete.
Oh my gosh. I'm like a zombie half the time, honestly. Right now, I'm not. I mean, it's nice. It's so weird to have so much time. Like, I'm going to bed at 11 p.m. now because I'm not exhausted. So my typical schedule before was I would strength train in the morning with my strength coach. So I'd get up at 5:30, and then I'd do that, and then I'd work. And then on my lunch break, I was lucky enough at my office, we had showers and a locker training room. So I would run from there, do my run workout, and then come back, shower, go back to my desk to work, and I'd eat my lunch at my desk. And then after work, I'd leave and I'd go swimming, or I'd do my bike workout, and then stretch, cook dinner, eat, drink wine, and then go to bed and start over. So yeah, I mean, I balanced it in a way that like I was able to do it, but it's hard. It's really hard. I know I always ask my coach, like, how do other people balance these two things? Because especially if you don't have a job that's in the sport, I feel like when they're just completely separate, it's just you're trying to find a way to make it all fit. Yeah, so that was the hardest part. And yeah, I would feel really tired all the time, like really fatigued. And then you wonder, like, do I have iron? Yeah, I'm terrible. I go on Google and like diagnose myself. So I'm like, I have some kind of anemia problem or whatever. And my coach is like, all right, go to the doctor. And he's like, your iron's fine. You're just doing a lot of different things. So yeah, I don't know how other people balance it, but for me, it was just, I had to really make sure I went to bed early. I did work on my diet. Like, I know if I eat certain foods, I'm going to feel like crap and it's going to be harder for me to get through the day and stuff like that. Yeah. And, you know, I know there are runners on here and running marathons, stuff like that. It's really hard, but I've done both. And I feel like triathlon is just, that's one of the hardest things to balance because there are so many different disciplines and you're training several times a day. And then by the time the weekend comes, that's when you put in like your big block of training, right? So it's like you finally get through the week and then you have to go out and ride 4 or 5 hours and then get off the bike and, you know, run 5 miles. And then you wake up the next day and you do a long run and it's just never ending. I'm probably scaring people off of away from the sport saying all this stuff. Yeah.
We have other questions. I don't see hands right. Oh, I see Sarah. Unmute.
Does anyone else have a question? You can put. I don't want to jump in if other folks have questions.
There aren't any more on the chat, so people ask away.
Feel free to use the little hand thing too.
Or hand. Yeah, I was looking for.
Trinity, thank you, Trinity. I didn't want to seem like a alcoholic over here.
I finished my drink like too early.
You didn't pay correctly for the happy hour.
Where's everybody's drinks? And I know you don't have to get up at 4:30 tomorrow to train, so why are you drinking?
Right. Okay, I do sort of have a question. First of all, like it's embarrassing for our sport that we've never had like an African American woman be a pro. Like that's just ridiculous. And obviously you recognize that. And also I really I really admire the fact that you've put that out there, that's the goal you're chasing. Because I think we all recognize how hard it is. It's hard just to tell like, you know, our 300 followers on Instagram or whatever the average person has, like our goals. let alone, you know, the way you've sort of announced it to the triathlon community. So I really respect that, because at minimum, it will inspire other people to go after that goal too, because they'll see you doing it and they'll imitate it. So I think that's really admirable. I guess I'm wondering how far off are you from, you know, sort of getting that pro card, and what, because that is like, if I think about it in terms of COVID-19, like you can still continue to better yourself as an athlete during this time, right? Even without races. And then like, is there any way we can help you get there? Or are there things that, I don't know, like, like, can I help? That's part of it. But also just like, how far off are you, and what, you know, what kind of needs to happen there?
Yeah. Okay. So how far off? Because it all is race dependent. You can't say like it's not ranking, right? You know, you can't be like, oh, if I can just get to the top 10 the way the U.S. has it. So let's take the last one that I did. Well, Kona technically was my last race, but Augusta, when I went after it, I needed to place in the top 3, and I came in 6th, and I was like 3 minutes and 40 seconds away or something from the top 3. So I don't know if I was able to swim, if I didn't like just sink like a log, maybe, you know, that's 3 minutes right there. So for me, it's working on my weaknesses. But in all fairness, I mean, I felt, and not to sound overly confident, but heading into the season, I was really fit. I thought last year was going to be my year. And I think it does go to show how much fitness I still had, that even after my crash, within 5 months, I was still able to miss it by like 3 minutes, you know, 3 places. So I'm confident in myself that I have it in me. I will never stop chasing it until I feel like, okay, it's not obtainable anymore. Yeah, so I feel like I was getting there. I felt like even this year, April, I thought at Challenge Cancun that top 3 was going to happen. Like right before COVID happened, I was putting in a really hard block of training, and even the day before I did a half marathon, I did this ridiculous bike workout like at Threshold, and my legs were just trash after, and I had to race a half marathon the next day. And I only ran a 1:27, but it felt like the end of a half Ironman. So I'm like, okay, I have it in me to run mid 120s, I think, in a half marathon, which I think is what would have taken at that race. So I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping, I'm knocking on that door. I got pretty close last year, so it will just, you know, come down to when the economy opens up and when we can start swimming and, you know, getting back into things. And I will, based on back to what you said before about putting it out there, I do think it's actually crazy for you to like just always put your goals. I remember when I did, the last marathon I did, I wrote, okay, and my PR literally was like, 1:28 half marathon. And I'm like, my goal is to break 3 hours in the marathon in a few months. And, you know, I'm sure out loud it sounds really crazy, but you know what, it makes it, I feel accountable. Like when I put it out there, it's like, okay, I put it out there, I've said it. My friends and family are going to be looking to see, is she going to break 3 hours? And you know what? I didn't. I actually missed it by 6 seconds. It was 3 hours and 6 seconds. And it was kind of embarrassing because I put it out there. I'm like, this is my goal. I'm going to do it. And then I just missed it. But at the same time, I don't think if I put it out there, I don't even think I have run nearly that fast. So for me, I've always just put it out there. And
yeah, I love that. I just wanted to follow up. I think it's fantastic that you were only 3 minutes away, because the 6th place is not, that's not the factor, right?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I was 3 minutes away from the 3rd place. Yeah.
And that's really important. Like that's definitely, even as like throughout my career, that was like how far back, and you're a runner too, right? Like how far back. It's not about how many people are ahead of you off the bike when you're running. It's about it's about how far ahead they are. So if I've got like, it doesn't matter if there's like 100 women within 3 minutes of me off the bike, great, I can overtake all of them, right?
Yep, that's so true. Yeah.
the same for you with this. Like, I feel if I can like encourage you at this, in this moment,
Yeah.
like 3 minutes, I'm like, okay, she's gonna do it. Just like,
Yeah, I know.
3 minutes is so close.
And you go back and you look, you're like, oh, well, where can I have made up that time? And for me, I had just such a shitty swim. And I look back on like the people that were in the top 3 versus me, and they all outswam me by 5 minutes. So it's like, okay, well, if I at least can make up a minute or 2 there, and then like even on the bike, that's still a work in progress for me, and like going through transition. So it's like, you know, the 3 minutes at first, it sounds so big, but then when you look at all the different areas where you can make it up, it's really not.
Yeah. We have another question from Rebecca. She said, with running being your strength, do you incorporate marathons into your Ironman training and leading into an Ironman race? If so, how do you recover after to resume Ironman training?
Well, I actually don't race marathons when I'm racing triathlons. It's funny that they bring that up because I love marathons and I love running. I actually I think marathons more than I do even half Ironmans. But I found that I was having such a hard time recovering after to properly train for triathlon. They really are 2 different sports. And I'm sure there are coaches on here that could talk about it better than I can. But like for me, since the swim is my weakness, and then the bike also, which has gotten better, but the bike also used to be my weakness. Like in triathlon, you have to work on your weaknesses. If it was up to me, I just run, but then I go to a race and, you know, you can't swim or bike that well. So it doesn't even matter how fast you can run. So I decided when I hired my coach, we talked about it, and he was like, let's cut out the marathons because you don't need to be putting in that much run mileage since it's your strength. And then you also, like for me, after a marathon, it literally takes me like 3 weeks to a month just to fully recover from a marathon, which kind of just takes you out of the season. So if you do, I was racing like a marathon in April, and it was taking me all this time to recover and then get into a block of training for triathlon. So I just decided to give that up. Yeah. I mean, and not everybody has to. Some people are really good about working that into their training. They'll do Boston before the tri-season starts and they find that they're stronger. But for me personally, I was having the opposite reaction to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then kind of related to that, you like just touched on like the swim being your slowest discipline. Pauline was asking, what are your plans to get faster in the swim?
I don't know, Colleen. Like, can you help me?
Get back in the pool.
Like, what are you gonna do? You're so bad. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I just swim and I don't get any faster. And, you know, they keep talking about feel of the water. And, you know, the more that you swim, hopefully it'll improve. I used to go to master swim practice. And I will say I did see some improvement there. Swimming with people who were faster than you. There was a coach on deck. And I did that for, I would say like 9 months, but I had to get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to it. And I would find myself getting really sleepy at work and like needing to take a nap and then not wanting to do my training for the rest of the day. So the benefits that I was gaining from it, it wasn't outweighing the negatives. So I stopped doing that. But if you do have access to, I don't know, with master swim, I guess that helps. But yeah, I don't know. I wish I had an answer about the swim. I'm still trying to figure that out. Yeah.
And then Marcus was asking, now that there are 2 HBCUs that have announced starting triathlon programs, what do you think needs to happen to raise awareness about the sport and ensure that the programs survive? Big question.
Yeah, you know, I was sort of involved. Yeah, that is. I was sort of involved with the buildup of the Hampton program. Yeah, so it's kind of like a slow process with those schools, I would say, compared to predominantly white schools. So, for people who don't know, HBCU is historically Black colleges and universities. So it's predominantly Black school, historically known as Black school. And they typically, I think there's only maybe one HBCU that has a varsity swim program, like in the country. So when schools add on a sport like triathlon, some of the other ones, they've already have swim programs, so they can recruit the athletes who are already on cross-country teams and swim programs and stuff into the triathlon program, so they have a background. With HBCU, it's a little different, right? So it's harder because we're typically not swimming, that program isn't offered, and usually we're sprinters. We're not, 10K collegiate runners. So that makes it a little trickier with that. So, I mean, I'm hoping that with more awareness with the sport and younger kids seeing these teams and maybe going to spectate and everything, they'll want to get involved in the disciplines that are needed to compete in that sport at that level. And then I think it's just going to be a slower process. Most people are like, oh, okay, well, now there's a team there, it's going to be easy and you can recruit. But no, again, it still comes back to these issues with 70% of us not being able to swim. So it makes it a little harder to recruit kids that are already swimming, or even, talking a kid who is on a swim program to cross over to triathlon, or who is on a kind of cross-country team to cross over to triathlon at an HBCU. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. And then, Lindsay, did you want to ask your question, or do you want me to read it?
Did I answer the question fully?
Marcus, did you have a follow-up question?
Oh, it's Marcus. Hi, Marcus. I don't see everybody.
Do you know him?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, he doesn't have his video camera on. That's why. Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, can you repeat that question one more time?
Yeah, so Lindsay's question is, it seems like you've been able to develop some good partnerships with brands and sponsors. Do you have any advice on reaching out to sponsors and maintaining those relationships?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Before it got competitive, I always looked at other people like, how do they get in touch with these companies? How do they get sponsorships and stuff like that? And, we see more and more there's the ambassador programs, and that is one way that I'm actually have gotten connected with some of these companies. It was I was originally an ambassador, and I communicated with them back and forth, and it developed over time. But I think if you have the opportunity to go to events like, for instance, Outspoken, or what's it? Oh, Triathlon Business International Conference. That's actually where I met the folks at Hoka. So it's who you know sometimes. Like, right, I'm not even that fast. And I'm sure people look at me like, well, why the heck does Hoka support her? She's a 3-hour marathoner. But I've met them at different speaking events and volunteering and stuff like that. And I think for me, these companies have seen something more than times on a paper or podiums. And I develop the relationship. Like, if I do get the contact information, we email back and forth and we stay in touch, and it turns into a relationship over time. It's not like, hey, Sika, here's a contract, sign with us, here's money. It's not like that at all. It's, let me send you this product, let me know what you think about it. And, you chat more and more, you meet up at races and stuff like that. So I would say just like communication, not sending a company or somebody you've never spoken to an email and saying, will you please sponsor me? It's more like being involved in different things, volunteering, stuff like that, and just developing the relationship over time. It's not going to happen overnight unless you're somebody who is winning a 70.3 or going to Kona as a pro. It doesn't happen. But yeah, it's not necessarily what you know, I guess, or who you know, or in this case, how fast you are necessarily. Or you can crash and like destroy your face and your bike, and people will feel bad for you. That's kind of how I got hooked up with Cervelo, honestly. I woke up the next, a few days after my crash, and I'm like, I want to race again. I don't have a bike. and I just destroyed this one, and I don't have 10 grand to spend on an Uber bike or whatever. So it's just talking to some of the people that I know and just say, you know, hey, could you tell them my story, share my story with them and what I'm interested in doing, and, you know, see if they're interested in helping me out. And that's how I got actually hooked up with Surveilo. They're just like, wow, okay, like you had this crazy goal and then this horrible accident happened, and, you know, we want to see if we can help you, you know, reach your goal.
I like it. Yeah, have a great comeback story is the key.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, I read this horrible comment. You know, people are so mean on social media, and I try not to read them that much, but I did this article for Slow Twitch about my new Surveilo, and it got posted on Facebook through the Slow Twitch page, and people were just saying to me, like, one guy was like, she's slow and I don't understand why she has a bike and blah, blah, blah. And I just wanted to be like, you know what, well, you go out and you crash and you wake up in the emergency room, and then, you know, you come back and win your first race back and then miss pro by 3 minutes and then go to Kona, and then you tell me. So it's like, whatever.
Wow. I think we have time for maybe one more question. There's a question from Elizabeth. She's recovering from back surgery 6 months ago and increasing her training. And she's asking if you can talk about mental toughness through recovery as you increased your distance and intensity. Her injury happened during an Ironman. And so she wants to do another one, but she's scared she's gonna repeat what happened.
Yeah, I feel for what she's going through, and I'm sorry that she's going through that. It's really tough. It's like you want to just go back to exactly the point where you were before, and speed things along. I don't know if she has a coach, but hopefully the coach is kind of reining her in. My coach did that a lot with me. I wanted to just keep pushing and pushing. And there were times when I did, and I would, you know, like start developing little injuries and everything. So I would just say to be patient. And I always say in my head, this too shall pass. I say that a lot. It's just like after my crash, I wouldn't, if I had to fast forward a few months, I wouldn't have thought in a gazillion years that I would be like racing and fit and everything again. But I think things just take time and you have to listen to your body. But I think as an endurance athlete, we're so fit and conditioned and trained that it's almost shocking how quickly you do bounce back from it. So it's like working more on the recovery and the stretching and the PT and doing all those little things. And then if you do those things properly and you give yourself time to heal, then you'll get back to where you were. It's kind of like when you have like a little niggle and, you know, like, I probably shouldn't run today. Okay, but I want to run anyway. And then you're injured. It's like, why didn't I just take that day off? And then I would have been fine, you know? So I have to keep reminding myself of that too. Yeah. But good luck. And I think you'll be fine.
Any other questions before we close out with Sika?
And can I just say hi, Lauren? She just had a baby during COVID, like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
She's there. Oh my God, I can't believe you're even on here. She's so adorable. So congratulations.
Oh, I see her now. Oh.
Yeah, she just had a baby.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining, guys, and thank you so much, Sika. You're super inspiring to me, and this is really a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you to everybody that joined. Hi. And if you're not drinking now, please have a glass of wine tonight.
Perfect.
Okay.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Sika. It was great to have you on here and get your insight and perspective, and good luck with the season, you know, hopefully we see you on some start lines. in the
Yeah, I
future.
hope so too. Yeah, good luck everybody as well. Hopefully we'll all get to see each other in person soon.